Welcome to the podcast, Entrepreneur Perspectives, building and protecting your business one podcast at a time, a CADSource family production. In this episode, we discuss being a student athlete, building a fitness brand, and the WNBA. Our guest today is Carolyn Moos, a former professional basketball player and current personal trainer. Carolyn is a 6'5" former USA basketball junior Olympic athlete with a BA from Stanford University, where she also played basketball. She played professionally in FIBA and the WNBA. Aside from basketball, Carolyn received her MA at USC in Health Communication Management. She is currently a certified personal trainer, yoga instructor, and nutrition consultant. The takeaway theme of this episode is how lifestyle changes can greatly benefit your productivity. And with productivity in mind, let's get right into this episode and welcome Carolyn Moos. Carolyn, welcome to our podcast. I want to jump right into it. What is it like getting drafted into the WNBA?
Great question. My whole life I actually was really focused on academics, and frankly, one of my top goals was to go to a great academic school. With that being said, I started a bit later in the game when it comes to basketball, picking up a basketball in sixth grade. I was 6 feet tall in sixth grade, if you can imagine. I played 5, 6, 7 different sports leading up to that moment. I really emulated my older brother. And the coach came to me and said, you are 6 foot, you're very athletic, you're very coordinated, you love to run. Why don't you just try this game? And so for me, the moment I picked up a basketball, I ran home and I said, Mom, Dad, there's nothing else I want to play. This is it. I love the game. I love everything about it. And to this day, I'm really glad I started. And then from there, it just trickled into playing for the number 1 AAU basketball team. We won nationals by my 8th grade year. And then I tried out for USA basketball, and that was a really phenomenal experience, bringing in the best players for our age group, around the United States and competing in Brazil. And then being able to attend Stanford University, graduate in 2001. My dream to become a professional athlete really started, I would say, probably freshman, sophomore year in high school, when I realized not only do I love this game, but the harder that I work, even though I was 6'5" by the time I was a sophomore, the harder that I work, I was differentiating myself from the rest by developing a three-point shot, being a face-up player, not just back to the basket. A modern basketball player can really do it all despite your position, despite your height. So I felt like, this is a realistic goal, and this is something I want to make happen. So for me, it was planting the seed relatively early, despite the fact I started a little bit later than most. And then once I got to Stanford, again, focusing on academics, knowing that was always going to be a great plan and path for me. And then once I did get drafted, I said, that's it. This is happening, and this is something I really wanted to accomplish. So I put in the work. I think anytime you put in the work, you feel well-deserved. I really don't believe in having things handed to anybody in life. And I think as long as you're open and receptive to being coached and being mentored and following a path of hard work, and it's realistic, that's very important to articulate, because sometimes it's not realistic. And I think it's important to have parents and coaches paint a realistic depiction of where that athlete could potentially go. And for me, becoming a pro athlete was definitely my top priority, along with academic development at Stanford.
Yeah, well, you said it too. You could have the height, you can have the talent, and we see it all the time where you see the height and the talent and it doesn't lead to anything. You had it, but it was all about the hard work that you put into it. And it sounds like that's what you're still doing today. So this started at a very early age for you, if I'm not mistaken, where you just had this passion for it. Maybe basketball, you picked up the ball and said, this is it. This is what I'm playing. And then you went on your mission. But you had a lot of other things going on, like you just said, with your academics. And now you're into training and you're helping other people out in your career, which says a lot about you and what you're all about. Tell me a little bit about going back and knowing that you were into athletics and just running around probably. What is that the type of child you were, where you just always had to be moving and on the go?
Yes. I have one older brother. I'm actually hyper competitive. So it was literally Monopoly all the way out to playing hockey, co-ed hockey, to even touch football. I was a girly girl, but I was also a tomboy, so a little bit of both. And I just, from day one, extremely active. I had a ton of energy. I absolutely love school, but at the end of the day, once I finished my homework, there's nothing I wanted more than to go play sports. So for me, it was just organic. It was never forced upon me. And I think that's really important for parents to hear, is that you have to find something that your child is very passionate about. And I don't have children yet, but when I do, I think I'm not going to put any pressure. It's more about exposure and getting a vast array of opportunities and experiences. And then you can really look in a child's eyes and say, what do you love doing? You know, what do you lose track of time doing when you're actually working hard? And when hard work is passion, it's no longer work. So I think for me, being out in the playing field, it was literally tennis, soccer, swimming, golf, horseback riding, obviously basketball, as I mentioned, in sixth grade. So being exposed to as many things as possible and just being extremely active. And then it creates this sense of a rhythm. So for me, it was get up early, go to school, have my snacks in between, rest for 20 minutes, go to practice, come home, do my homework, go to sleep, do it again. So it yielded a large amount of structure. So I think structure in my life started honestly in kindergarten. I started with sports when I was very, very young.
Yeah, no, I mean, you say that so well, because I have 3 kids, and I know what you're saying, and I've been out on the fields or on the courts, and I've seen kids who didn't want to be there. And then you kind of look out the other side of it, and you see they're not there for themselves. They're there for somebody else, right? Like you referenced before. And it's like, it's difficult, right? But I think you say it extremely well, and you're out there helping anybody. With the content that you put out there, and then the one-on-ones that you're probably having with people, try to identify and make a modification the way they perceive the things that they're doing, or the way that the people around them, maybe their children, are doing. And you had this because you grew up in a household that allowed you to explore all these different things, and finally found your passion of basketball. But you've taken it much further than that, like we mentioned before. When did you start putting this all together? Because when I read your stuff and hear you talk, it's not just you going out and, like you just talked about, developing a three-point shot. That's a part of it. But you understand like how your core plays a role, and the type of foods that you eat, all impact the success and the productivity that you have. When did that become something that you really took on and wanted to learn more about?
Absolutely. So for me, nutrition, sleep patterns, not drinking alcohol, all of those components, I actually started studying on my own time in 5th grade and 6th grade, which I know seems quite early, but I think it was introduction to sciences and physiology, and I realized the correlation between external factors, that being environmental, and then you have genetics. So genetically, people are gifted. Obviously, I'm 6'5". I appreciate my height tremendously. However, through coordination drills, through cross-training, through strategic nutrition, you are definitely able to manipulate muscle-to-fat ratios. You're definitely able to manipulate motor skill development. So I was really, honestly, at a very young age, wanting to study science, physiology, and how I could optimize the expression of what I was given from a genetic standpoint. And for me, it was, again, not forced. My parents would say, hey, here are 10 books, go read them. It was, hey, Mom and Dad, can you buy me some nutrition books? This is what I want to do when I finish homework. So it was really my own decision. And on top of that, again, I'm extremely competitive. And my older brother, I remember the first time I went to the weight room with him, and he just teases me. He says, oh, you're lifting air, pushing feathers. So like his thing was, he would always just kind of jab and poke with me. And he said, give me 2 to 3 years, just 2 to 4 years. And I got in the weight room. I really started to focus on nutrition. And I grew up in a fairly healthful or health-conscious household, so it wasn't drastically making changes. However, now I specialize in strategic macronutrient profiling, which is the ratios of proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, meal timing, pre- and post-workout, and optimizing muscle-to-fat ratios. So I've really dived into it quite deeper, and just generally eating healthy. I really wanted to optimize my muscle gains, but doing it the right way, which is through hard training, proper sleep patterns, and very strategic nutrition. So again, for me, it was self-discovery, and it was also very early, 5th and 6th grade. And then moving on through the years, I started off in human biology at Stanford and pre-med track, and continued to study physiology. And I realized I wanted to be on the prevention side of the equation versus treatment, which is contradictory to our healthcare system. And I my master's at USC in health communication management, where I continued my studies further, and I became a certified trainer with CEUs and pre and postnatal nutrition, athlete nutrition, training, etc. So it really started in 5th and 6th grade on that journey.
Yeah, I mean, what I find fascinating, and it's not everyone has this, you knew what you loved early on. And it's a hard thing to find, but then you continued going for that throughout, and you're still doing it today. And so you stuck with it, and it's hard for people to find that could be late in their career and they really don't have the thing that they're doing that they love. So I commend you for doing it, sticking with it, and now helping other people out through their journey. What types of people? Is it athletes? Is it anybody? Who do you work with?
In terms of demographics, it's a wide range, everything from children, young aspiring student athletes, to children that just want to become healthier, all the way up to working professional adults, weekend warriors, pregnant women, also at-risk patients, obese patients, type 2 diabetics, high blood pressure. And then I also work with pro athletes, so teaching yoga and nutrition to pro athletes. So it's quite the gamut. And then also elderly. I actually do have some clients in their 50s, 60s, and 70s as well. And at that point, it's really about longevity, functional movement, and those types of patterns start early. I do work with 30 and 40-year-olds where I do talk about who do you want to be when you're 50, 60, and 70. And it's very difficult sometimes for people to project every single choice you make every single day dictates who you're going to be 10 to 15 years from now. But the more people can, hold on to that philosophy, the more they understand the bigger picture of health and wellness.
Yeah, and with you differentiating yourself in the marketplace today, there's a lot of wellness, there's a lot of fitness. Just go on Instagram, right? And there's a lot of people putting content out there and claiming to be experts, which makes it challenging for someone like yourself who has been on this long journey and truly has an understanding of what it is like to do what you do and the things that you say. It's obvious that you would be someone that someone should talk to. The problem that the market has is it's polluted with a lot of people that claim to be experts. How do you get around that?
At the end of the day, people consume that which they believe, and people consume that which they have high perceived value. So high perceived value is a result of education. And I think if people are open and receptive to being educated versus making assumptions based on how something looks. So the beauty of marketing is that through a visual image, we have an instant feeling of high perceived value. For example, if someone is eating a particular piece of fruit or a bar or whatever, and they're a very lean cut athlete and it has this tremendous advertisement with them performing at the highest level, there's an emotional correlation between the habitual pattern of what they consumed and their performance, right? But at the end of the day, did that person sit down and say, why is this helping you? What's the physiology behind that? What's the reasoning behind that? So for me, honestly, with a BA from Stanford and master's from USC, I like to get to the why. And then if people are open enough to have that 15-minute conversation or have an initial phone conversation, we can figure out what is the reason for the path we're going to choose for them, because it is personal. There's no cookie cutter answer for everybody because everybody has a slightly different why. And to take the time to dive a bit deeper than, not just what you see, but what is the reason behind that path that you're going to choose with that professional? And that's something that, in terms of differentiation, is what I'm hearing from you. That is something I do very well because I'm very academic, and I like to discover that path with that person in a very academic way. So I'd really encourage people to not just jump to conclusions, not just look at an image, look at a quote correlated to an image and say, that's what I need. We do the quick fix syndrome. People just push a button. I'm going to get a six-pack tomorrow. And I'm going to
Good luck. Yeah.
And I'm like, no, it's actually going to take a lot of hard work, and it's not just about the workouts, which will be very strategic, but it's about nutrition, sleep patterns, limiting your alcohol, looking at your cortisol to endorphin ratios. Everything that you do, every facet of what you do will affect you reaching that goal. And so working with a professional that is a bit more academic is, for me, the differentiating factor.
Okay. What I like that you said too early on in that is if they're open to it. So it sounds like, and we talk about this in our marketing business a lot, if we're going to talk to someone about creating unique content, doing a podcast, writing a blog and doing video, and they are so against it that they're not open to it. And it's probably not worth the time to spend with it. And it sounds like you have that same type of philosophy when it comes to, people that you talk to.
Absolutely. And I think receptiveness is the result of feeling comfortable and feeling as if you trust somebody. And that comes from a place of understanding, a place of clarity. And sometimes people don't know exactly what they want for themselves, and therefore you don't blame them for maybe lacking trust. Because the less they know of what their successes could be, let's say someone only relates to failure. Oh, I tried this, it didn't work. I tried that, it didn't work. So they tried all the wrong things to yield a result they didn't desire. So you don't blame them for being a little bit cautious, but maybe they haven't tried something that was very well thought out, and they were going too much over, the short fix, the quick fix, and not doing it necessarily the correct way. So really helping someone in a new way that's going to yield new results develops a high sense of trust.
Yeah. But now I want to go to something also that you said is you mentioned Stanford, right, and USC. And when you say USC, you're talking about Southern Cal, correct?
Yes.
How do your friends let you get away with going to USC and Stanford?
I know. Thankfully, very different programs. I actually had a few years of professional basketball in between those two programs.
Okay,
as well.
There you go. So you built some time in there.
A little bit.
So when USC and Stanford are playing today, who are you pulling for? Are you just rooting for a good game?
I think that actually is a question I get asked often, and I always go with my mater. Unfortunately, SC, I have to go with Stanford just because that is really my heartbeat. As much as I enjoyed my master's program, I really, truly obtained a lot out of that. But spending 4 years at Stanford, I have so much loyalty and commitment to the Cardinal. I say go Card.
There you go. So you played, and let's talk about this a little bit. When you played high school, and then you played it in college at Stanford, and then you talked about the USA team that you played for, and you traveled to Brazil, and I believe you traveled all over the place. Would you say that's, besides Stanford, is that one of your most favorite memories and experiences that you had of playing basketball?
Absolutely. I actually really enjoyed playing professionally in France. So I lived in France for 6.5, 7 months, and culturally there's just so much depth, and frankly, you are quite busy as a professional athlete. We had 2-a-day practices the entire time, which essentially means you're going to and from the gym Monday through Saturday. And most Sundays we would have off contingent upon the season schedule. So you're definitely a professional as you dive into that realm. But with that being said, is every Sunday I would try to get into Paris and see museums and art shows, and there's just so much culture to absorb. So with that being said, is I like to look at student athletes and even pro athletes and say, in what ways can you take advantage of your environment such that you're developing yourself more than just an athlete? And so for me, I make a conscious effort of that. So even when we traveled with USA Basketball, we did things outside of our games that we had, despite the fact you're incredibly drained physically. So you have to be creative about what you decide to do. We did go on dune buggies, in Brazil, which was incredibly fun, but that was after the games were over.
That's right.
Obviously, no one got hurt.
Yeah.
But you just have to enjoy yourself and realize that life is short, and whatever gifts you're given, and especially when you're living in a different country, it makes no sense just to go gym to gym, because that's what you're going to replicate when you go straight into the WNBA. And you might as well experience something different that's going to actually help you grow as a human being. So I was really big on the cultural aspects of that part of my life.
Yeah, and taking advantage of the location that you're in. We hear the stories all the time about Division I athletes and the struggles that they have because so much of the focus is on the games and getting ready for the games and how do you study. And then you're at a university like Stanford. That's something you have to deal with. You have to balance your schedule. Some people complain about it, but it sounds like you were the one of the many ones also taking advantage of that opportunity of being at Stanford and enjoying that and making it and grooming it to what you've become today, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the WNBA comes around, you get drafted, and you played overseas, and I believe you came back to the Miami Soul, if I'm not mistaken. How long was that? Did you enjoy your experience with the WNBA?
I did enjoy it. For me, I was drafted to Phoenix, and then I played in France and was picked up in Miami. And for me at that time, I knew that I wanted to go back and finish my master's and also create some roots, and have some more consistency. It's absolutely wonderful life being a pro athlete, but it is quite busy. It's also isolated at times in terms of the travel schedule and in terms of literally going from gym to gym, as I had mentioned. So for me, I love working out. I love the commitment. Still love the game. I never burned out of the game. And actually, in terms of injuries, I've never had a major injury. I missed one practice in 4 years at Stanford for a common cold, which is pretty phenomenal. Never, I had a little bit of a cartilage issue in the bone. Someone elbowed me on a box out. I dislocated my pinky once, rolled my ankle once in the pros. So for that reason, I felt, okay, I can keep playing for a little while. And then I went back to Los Angeles. I finished my master's, and I actually built up my business there. And I was also working simultaneously, and everything was going very, very well. And on top of that, I wasn't traveling. So I realized I actually have 4 to 6 more hours, in a day, whether it's, to meal prep or to get to and from where I wanted to go. It was still a very busy lifestyle, but less being on the plane, less sitting in airports, being disconnected from my friends, frankly. But everybody makes choices based on what their career goals are. And I do know friends of mine who are coaches in the NBA, for example, or, trainers that travel with the team. And it's just a lifestyle you have to be open to if that's something you really want to pursue. For me at that time, the idea of being situated and traveling less and getting more done, that's how I felt about it, was a great fit for me. So I enjoyed my time as a pro athlete, and I, definitely wouldn't change that chapter for anything.
Yeah, and is this around the time then that you started creating your personal brand, or had you already been on that path?
Yeah, so I actually was in between playing professionally and then going right into the WNBA, and I had clients before I left for France, actually, and I said, number one, I want to get certified. Number two, I want to obtain liability insurance, for protection. And number three, I have to figure out a platform that I can replicate virtual training on. At that time, Skype came out. It was more for social purposes and for people to stay connected while they traveled internationally. And so the overhead of that obviously is beneficial. And one, the scalability of that is beneficial. So for me, it was actually prior to me leaving the country that I thought about, one, getting certified as a trainer, and two, being able to leverage that for remote communications and being able to deliver services through remote platforms. So it was at that moment that I just got all my study materials. I was like, all right, I have a month to do this. I'm going to study. I'm going to take the exam, and I'm going to get certified. So I did. And then every 2 years, you have CEUs that are due to continue that certification. And I've done that ever since 2002. So 2002, to answer your question, is the moment at which I said, okay, fitness, health, wellness, this is something I'm really good at, and I live what I promote, and I'm going to keep doing this. And it was basketball players at the time, but then it developed into, again, obese patients, women that just wanted to look their best and feel their best. Even men, that wanted to be challenged, yoga, weight room. I'm 6'5", so I feel like I can relate to taller, lankier bodies very well. And that's pretty unique, being a 6'5" yoga instructor and being able to have people feel comfortable, that might not initially feel comfortable initially doing different modes of workout. So it was really 2002.
Okay. I love how you talk about you being 6'5". You've said it multiple times here. If I go to your social media, I see it everywhere there. You talk about it. It's a differentiator for you. You mentioned that earlier. And then you differentiated your basketball game because everyone assumed, well, she's 6'5", so she's going to be in the post. And you're actually, no, I'm going to shoot threes. And more like the modern day player now, the 7-footers that are pulling up for three when they come down the court, right? So yeah. I love how you use that, though, not only from when you were younger in the game that you played, but now in your business, and how everyone that's probably walking in to work with you, everyone has something unique about them, like you said, that, whatever things bothering them, whether they're overweight, whether they're short, whether they're tall, whatever that might be, they can look at you to say, you're out there living it every single day. That is in itself the differentiator to say, I trust that person because she's gone through this as well, and she's loving every aspect of it, right?
This is true. I mean, I think uniqueness at the end of the day is a gift. And for me personally, I don't appreciate the idea of being cookie cutter or fitting inside a box. And I can even remember in 3rd and 4th grade, especially for girls, they start developing cliques and socially isolating other people that might not fit into a certain box. So relating that to fitness and health, if someone is maybe a little bit overweight or their body fat percentage is a bit high, they might feel a little bit ousted or maybe potentially judged in some way. But what I like to do is internally make someone feel comfortable with their journey and that reflection of you are your own best comparison, right? So wherever you're starting does not dictate where you're going to go, and it also doesn't shape your perception from others. You have to be proud of where you are and where you're going. So I think, my whole life, because I've stood out, and obviously it's very challenging, 5th through 8th grade especially, when you're different. It could be anything. It could be you have red hair. It could be you're 6'3". It could be, whatever that differentiating factor is, being able to embrace that and feel comfortable with it and be confident in the fact that you are different does help with helping people feel understood, and also feel appreciated for those differences and the path that they have to go on.
Yeah, I told you before, I have 3 children, and I appreciate all that you're saying, because 2 of my children, my oldest is a son, my other 2 are daughters, and the things that you are saying now, this is what they need to always hear, not just from their mom and dad, but from people like yourself, people that are educated in this and that have gone through many stages of life that they'll be going through, to understand what it is like to be unique and to take advantage of it and to understand the obstacles that they're going to go through. So I would just, whatever it is that you're doing, keep doing it, keep doing more of it, put that content out there, because my daughters are just for 2 of them that will be paying attention to what you're doing. So we appreciate the effort that you put into all of that. Speaking of women and women's basketball, we touched on the WNBA before. I'm just curious, before we get into the rapid fire round, what do you see as the future of women's basketball, be it the WNBA or another level?
The future of basketball is contingent upon the next generation of talent. I think at the end of the day, if we produce a great product, then we'll have fans and continue to build on the diversity of fan base. For me personally, I think it's really cool to have young boys or mothers and sons, come out to a game, and the mom might come up to me and say, you know what, my son really looks up to you, or, my son wants to be like you someday. And like that's like a really cool feeling, as a female or a strong female athlete. So I think diversification of audiences is something I would hope to tap into, and for them to continue marketing that really calls for diversification. So families, parents, people of all walks of life, whether they're learning basketball for the first time. I mean, I have adults come to me and they say, I actually have wanted to learn how to play basketball, and I'm 40, so maybe they go out to the games and help support, female pro athletes just because they have interest in it. So I think for me, the continued talent level is just going to get better and better. I think an acute awareness of health and wellness, so optimizing performance based on nutrition, strategic weight room, yoga, sleep patterns, all those things that help to just continue to help blossom genetics. Every generation gets taller, stronger, faster, it seems. Obviously, that's contingent upon a lot of factors genetically. But with that being said, is the more we can fine-tune our environmental influences, the more we can optimize the expression of the top genes that are pulled together to produce the top talent from the athletic standpoint. So I would like to see that being even a higher focus in the next 5 to 15 years.
Yeah, no, we can see it. I mean, you see it for women's basketball. You see it with women's soccer. I mean, they're for example, they're the Olympic or the U.S. women's national team for soccer, for example, has quite a following. I think basketball has gotten there as well. It just need to have continued competition from all over, from different countries, because the U.S. is so strong. I like how you're giving back to the game that you love in different ways. And I think that's important for a lot of people in a lot of different industries. And with that, what I'm going to do is kind of transition into the rapid fire round, and it's based on a thing that we're just talking about of being a basketball player and a trainer. If you weren't a basketball player and trainer, what career do you think you would be in?
I think for me, being in health and wellness in general, relative to prevention or prescriptions, because I really think a major concept in our healthcare system is we're more reactive than we are proactive. So I think definitely staying in that space, or potentially being a professional basketball coach, despite my comment about traveling and wanting to be more rooted. I believe at a certain level, that being a professional athlete, I really, really enjoy direct communication about clear expectations as correlated to wanting to win. Because I'm a natural competitor, I am a very open, direct style of communication, and I appreciate how pro athletes take direct communication and apply it instantaneously, and they don't take it personally. And that's something to me that honestly at all corporate levels they can learn from that, because everything that is said to benefit the progression of someone's talents. And to not internalize comments, I call it constructive criticism, and to be able to use that as well. This person really cares about me. They want me to reach my full potential. So therefore, the more they talk to me, the more they correct me, the more they guide me, I actually have more potential. So I think for some people that's hard to learn, and I think coaching is a great space to have that naturally be able to be expressed.
Well, it makes sense, because what you're talking about is holding people accountable, and holding those accountable that actually can be held accountable, because it's one thing to hold them accountable, but it's another thing to be held accountable. And clearly, like you just laid out, that's what you're doing. And so it makes a lot of sense that you would want to say, oh, I could be a coach, and they would listen and want what I'm offering and take it and learn from it. And like you just said, progress in their career.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So you're an academic, you read a ton. I don't know if it's books or textbooks or whatever it is. You have a lot going on. If there was one book you would recommend for entrepreneurs or just people to read, what book would that be?
It's definitely challenging to pick one, because I've read so many through my life. They're all complementary. They're not competitive in nature as far as topic matter. With that being said, the initial one that comes to mind is The Power of Positive Thinking, from the perspective that your mindset affects your execution. So I truly believe in people doing what they need to do to achieve what they want in life, taking the reins, making a plan, execution, and following through. But I also strongly believe that if they don't have the right mindset during that hard work, during that process, they're ultimately going to fail. So being in that mindset prior to setting on that journey, and trusting and having a high amount of trust in your choice to go on a particular path, to me is very powerful.
I was going to ask earlier on if you work in mindset, and then here you go talking about it. We had Derek Bielsma with Millennium Hope in Chicago, and he played Division I soccer at Wisconsin, and now runs he runs Millennium Hope, and we put the description to that, or put that in the show notes. But it's impressive that you cover it all, right? You're talking about all the different things, and for you to bring up that book, like we always say on this podcast, the common theme sticks with the individual that we're talking to, and that's no different than with you, Carolyn. Social media, obviously we talked about before. You're building a personal brand. You have your website. You're on Instagram. You're on Twitter. You're on LinkedIn. If you were to pick one social media app today for business that's your favorite, what would that be?
Again, it's hard to pick one, because I truly believe they have different purposes. And if we could do a hybrid of Instagram and Facebook, I think visual and audio is mutually beneficial. Being in the health and fitness space, going back to my comment about the visual impact, people want to see results and outcomes. With that being said, the process is very, very academic. It's also prolonged. It's not going to happen overnight. There's no quick fix out there. And somebody needs to work with a professional to fine-tune the process. So that process is going to be the audio component, right? The education, the in-depth conversation, the back and forth. The visual is going to be here with me, 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks out, 8 weeks out, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever that journey looks like. So I think a combination of both auditory and visual is very, very necessary to get a point across and to also leverage marketing.
Sports, talked about it a lot. Obviously, you played for the Cardinal, but if I were to only allow you to root for one team as a fan for the rest of your life, what team would that be?
You did answer my question. I would have to go with my alma mater, Stanford, just for the fact that I truly have gotten to know even the upcoming generation of student athletes at Stanford, and they're extremely unique in the fact that academically it's very, very demanding on campus, and to be able to bring together a high caliber academic group of individuals that have all different vocations, years down the road and compete at that highest of levels, to me, that's really special, and to be able to mentor and to talk to future student athletes that may potentially go to Stanford. It's a very, very special experience. And so I respect their hard work, and I also respect how dynamic they are. And you just realize how hard they work in the classroom. And then when you see them competing on the field or the court, you just see this amazing individual and these group of individuals coming together for a collective goal. And it's pretty powerful. So I have to say my alma mater.
Yeah, well, that's deep-rooted, and your answer is deep-rooted in it. And, I mean, can only, like you said, the word respect a lot. We can only respect that. It makes a lot of sense. And Stanford's always competitive and known as one of the best institutions in this country. So it's I'm sure it was a privilege and an honor for you to play and to continue to be a part of that that legacy that'll continue to carry on. So the last question, go ahead.
Watching pro athletes, I enjoy getting to NBA games, NFL games, and just the sheer level of physicality, competitiveness at the pro level is really, really exciting. So it's I would say again, it's hard to limit it to one because you will catch me at some pro games. That's not challenging Stanford games whatsoever.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You're gonna get out there. I'm sure it's like any game, like you said earlier. You're playing Monopoly and you're going you can play street hockey, whatever it is. If there's a game to be played, you'll be playing it, and you're gonna enjoy it. So we're going to go to the last question. We'll let you out of here, and you can let people know how to get a hold of you. But the last question is, when was the moment you told yourself you needed to make it happen and you gave yourself no excuses?
That's a great question. I actually am going to answer that by saying I don't believe in excuses. So therefore, that answer has been my entire life. The reason I don't believe in excuses is because once you follow a certain path towards a goal or a journey, and let's say for some reason you get a curveball or you face adversity, and something unknown, unforeseen occurs, your job as an individual is to either redefine your goals or redefine the path towards a new goal, right? So to me, taking ownership of that journey, and it's not a roadblock, it's not an obstacle, it's just rerouting and redefining. And so for that reason, even when I coach like little kids, boys and girls, I say I don't believe in the word I can't, and I don't believe in the word excuses or the concept of excuses. I will help you rediscover what direction you're going to go. I will help you redefine that path. But at the end of the day, you're never going to run into a wall that you can't either go around, climb over, or break down and push through.
Well, Carolyn, I mean, that type of response is the type of thing I want like I said before, I want my children to hear, I want my daughters to hear, and I know a lot of people need to hear that. I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate you spending time with us and talking to us about lifestyle modification, about you building your personal brand, about falling in love with what it is you do at a young age and continuing with that. I think just a lot of people need to hear it and continuing to evolve and refine what it is that you're doing and the type of people that you work with. So, like I said, thank you for spending time with us. What is the best way people can get a hold of you?
Yes, so you can visit my website, www.fitforlivinglife.com. That's www.fitforlivinglife.com. You can also email me directly at c.m as in Mary, O-O-S as in Sam, at stanfordalumni.org. That's c.moos@stanfordalumni.org. You can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram. It is 6'5" Carolyn Moos with the numbers 6'5" for Instagram. And then if you Google Carolyn Moos, and I'm currently based out of DC, and I do work with individuals by FaceTime, Skype, and Google Hangout. So essentially, you can be based anywhere in the world and work with me, which is very beneficial for people in Europe or overseas. And that's nutrition, yoga, etc. I also have pre-recorded content, so from the comfort of your own home, you can do yoga workouts online. And I look forward to hearing from you.
Well, that's great. You have it all, Carolyn, and we, like I said, we appreciate it. I'll definitely be having my own children be checking out your stuff, and we'll stay in touch. I think there's a lot of great things that you're offering out there and staying on top of the market that you're in. So thank you again.
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
Carolyn, it has been absolutely awesome having you on this podcast. Thank you for helping our listeners understand how lifestyle changes can greatly benefit productivity. The perspectives from Carolyn on playing professional basketball and running her own health brand are now perspectives you can use for yourself. And for that, Carolyn, thank you. And for anyone looking to talk to Carolyn about her consulting work, we encourage you to reach out to her. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. You can find me on LinkedIn or contact me on Twitter and Instagram at Eric_Kaz. Thank you for listening to our KazSource podcast, Entrepreneur Perspectives, building and protecting your business one podcast at a time. Until next time, we're out of here. This podcast exists in large part because of KazCM, the content marketing business inside KazSource Inc. KazCM is excited to bring the content marketing services used at KazSource to you. Learn more by visiting KazCM.com. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. It's a big deal to us. We hope you found value in it, and if you did, we would be incredibly grateful if you gave us a review on iTunes. Remember to subscribe to this podcast, and feel free to share it with anyone you know. More than anything, thank you again for listening. We appreciate it.